For years, Marla Whitmore believed she could judge a man's worth by the shoes on his feet. When Clarence James walked into Hamilton and Royce Motors in a gray hoodie and scuffed sneakers, she didn't see a customer. She saw a nuisance. She dismissed him with polite contempt, handed him a flyer for used cars, and all but asked him to leave. Her voice was calm, her posture firm, her mind was made up. But when they picked Clarence, they didn't know who they were messing with. They didn't know Clarence James was the new owner of the entire luxury dealership. And what followed wasn't just a reckoning. It was a quiet, unforgettable lesson in respect. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you're watching from and make sure to subscribe, because the story you're about to hear isn't just about one man. It's about all of us. Sunlight poured through the high showroom windows, warming the polished chrome of untouched luxury cars. Outside, birds chirped gently. Inside, judgment lingered in the still air. Until one man, standing quietly in worn denim, decided it was time to change everything. The sun hung low over Westbridge, casting long golden streaks across the pavement as a nondescript silver SUV pulled into the back lot of Hamilton and Royce Motors, one of the city's most prestigious luxury car dealerships. The driver stepped out slowly. He wore a gray hoodie, faded jeans, and a pair of old sneakers. There was nothing flashy about him. If anything, he looked like a man simply passing through, maybe looking for the restroom or asking for direction. But what nobody knew, at least not yet, was that this man, Mr. Clarence James, had just purchased the entire dealership the week before. Clarence didn't come to make an announcement or take a victory lap. He came for something far quieter and far more telling. To see how his staff treated someone who didn't look like they belonged. Inside, the place sparkled with wealth. Polished floors, glass showcases, luxury models gleaming under soft lighting. It was everything one might expect from a place that sold six-figure vehicles. But Clarence wasn't here for the cars. He was here for the people. He took a breath and stepped through the glass doors. Almost immediately, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations quieted. 3 employees behind the reception desk exchanged glances. One of them, a young man in a designer tie, lowered his voice as Clarence passed. They didn't say anything cruel, but they didn't say anything at all. No welcome, no offer of help, just silence and sidelong glances. Clarence didn't flinch. He moved with the same calm grace he'd learned decades ago. First on factory floors, then in boardrooms. He simply observed. Can you remember a time when someone sized you up without knowing your story? He wandered past a red convertible, ran his fingers lightly across its mirror finish, and gave a small, knowing smile. The game had begun. This wasn't about ego. This was about culture. About uncovering a truth that would soon surprise everyone in that showroom, especially the one person who was about to make a very big mistake. Sometimes you learn more in silence than in speech. Clarence already had his first answer. Clarence had barely taken 10 steps into the showroom when she spotted him. Her name was Marla Whitmore, the floor manager. She was known for running a tight ship, heels clicking sharply against tile, always holding a clipboard, eyes like a hawk. That morning, she wore a navy blue blazer and a lipstick shade that meant business. When she saw Clarence, her smile was swift but tight, calculated. "Sir," she said, striding toward him, "may I help you?" Clarence nodded politely. "Just looking." She glanced at his shoes, worn soles, no designer logo. Her eyes flicked to the hoodie, then the jeans. Something in her expression shifted, just slightly, but it was there. That barely masked look people get when they've already made up their minds. Marla folded her arms. "These vehicles," she said, gesturing with her clipboard, "start at $100,000. We require pre-qualification before test drives. Perhaps I could refer you to one of our partner locations. Clarence raised an eyebrow. Is there a reason you think I wouldn't qualify? Her mouth opened, just a fraction, but nothing came out. Then she blinked, recovering. Just trying to be efficient with your time, sir. These models aren't for everyone. The line hit harder than she might have intended. Clarence didn't react outwardly, but inside something settled. He looked past her, toward the cars. The irony wasn't lost on him. He owned every single one in that building. Yet here he stood, being politely pushed aside like he didn't belong. Can you imagine being told you're not the right kind of person in a place you own? Marla continued, her voice soft but firm. There's a dealership across town with more accessible options. I can print out some listings for you. Clarence gave a small, tight smile. Why not? Let's see what you recommend. And in that moment, her assumptions became the lesson she never expected to learn. Sometimes dignity wears dusty sneakers, and silence is the loudest reply. Marla returned with a printout, a neat list of pre-owned sedans, all safe, all modest. She handed it to Clarence without fanfare, as if offering a map to the exit. These are more practical choices, she said, her tone clipped but civil. Reliable, within reach. Clarence took the paper slowly, eyes scanning the page. He nodded, then folded it in half with careful fingers. Appreciate the suggestion, he said evenly. But something in his voice, calm as it was, made Marla glance up. His eyes weren't irritated, they weren't smug, they were steady. Too steady. She shifted slightly, uneasy, her grip on the clipboard tightening. Listen, she added, lowering her voice. I've been in this business a long time. I know when someone's out of their depth. It's better to be realistic up front than to waste anyone's time. Clarence tilted his head. Out of their depth, he repeated, almost to himself. Marla pressed on. Luxury Motors isn't for everyone, and I'm just trying to keep expectations grounded. If you're serious, we can schedule something formal. Otherwise, her voice trailed off, the pause louder than her words. Otherwise, Clarence looked around, letting her words settle into the silent corners of the showroom. A few employees had started to watch. Some pretended not to. But tension buzzed in the air like static, waiting to spark. Then Clarence turned back and smiled just a little. Maybe you can help me, he said. Can I speak with the owner? Marla blinked. I'm afraid that's not possible. The owner doesn't do walk-ins. They're busy. Oh, I understand, Clarence replied. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. I'll give them a quick call. Marla stiffened. Wait, what are you doing? Clarence lifted the phone to his ear. Just calling the owner. Shouldn't take long. Have you ever seen someone realize they've made a terrible mistake just one breath too late? Some truths don't shout. They ring in quietly. With perfect timing, the phone call was brief. Just a few quiet words from Clarence and a soft, "Thank you," before he slid the device back into his pocket. Around him, the air had changed. Conversations had stopped. Even the hum of the showroom seemed to dim. Marla stared at him, her arms now crossed tighter, like armor. Who did you just call? She asked, voice thinner than before. Clarence didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked around the showroom. The polished glass, the $1,000,000 shine, the people pretending not to stare. Guess we'll find out soon enough, he said. The silence pressed in. Then the main entrance doors opened with a quiet click. A man in a navy suit stepped through, striding with purpose. Vincent Palmer, the regional director of Hamilton and Royce Motors, had arrived, and the moment his eyes landed on Clarence, his face broke into a warm smile. Mr. James, he said, extending his hand with genuine respect. So good to see you. Clarence shook it firmly. Thanks for coming, Vincent. Sorry for the surprise visit. Marla's clipboard nearly slipped from her grasp. Her eyes darted between the two men, confusion rippling across her polished face. "Wait, Mr. James?" she stammered. Vincent turned to her, his voice now all business. "Elena? Excuse me, Marla, I see you've met our new owner." Owner? The word hit harder than any reprimand. Marla's mouth opened and closed once, then again. I didn't know. I didn't realize." "You didn't realize someone like me could own a place like this?" Clarence asked gently, not angry, just honest. "Can you imagine standing in a place of power, only to be treated like a problem?" The silence was heavy. Clarence turned to Vincent. "Let's gather the staff," he said. "It's time we had a talk about how things work around here. Respect isn't a luxury. It's the ground we all stand on, and sometimes it needs to be shaken to be remembered." The conference room at Hamilton and Royce Motors had never felt so small. Glass walls, sleek chairs, and a polished table meant to impress now seemed to trap the tension like heat in a sealed box. Every employee had been called in. Some shuffled in nervously, others sat stiff-backed, eyes fixed on anything but Clarence James, who now stood at the head of the table with quiet authority. Vincent remained near the door, arms crossed, his face unreadable. Marla sat 2 seats from the end, her posture rigid, her clipboard untouched. Her eyes, usually sharp and commanding, now searched the grain of the table like it held answers. Clarence looked at them all, not with anger, but with purpose. "Thank you for joining me on short notice," he began, his voice calm but strong. "For those who don't know, I'm Clarence James. I'm the new owner of this dealership." There was a ripple, a subtle shift of weight, a few widened eyes. "I came in today looking like any customer might," he continued. "No announcements, no suits, no entourage. Just a man curious about the culture he'd just inherited." He paused. The silence held its breath. "What I found," he said slowly, "was disappointing." He let those words land. Not harsh, just true. "I wasn't judged by what I said or how I acted. I was judged by what I wore, by what people assumed I couldn't afford, and I wasn't alone in that." Clarence's eyes swept the room, finally settling on Marla. How many people walk through these doors and leave feeling like they didn't belong? How many never come back? Have you ever walked into a place and felt invisible? Marla's face flushed, but she said nothing. "This isn't just about me," Clarence added. "It's about every single person who comes here hoping to be treated with dignity and walks out carrying the weight of someone else's assumptions. Dignity doesn't cost a thing, but withholding it can cost everything." The room was still, not silent, just suspended. Clarence stood tall at the head of the table, his presence no longer just respected, but felt. Every word he'd spoken settled like dust on glass. Sudden, visible, and undeniable. From the back, a young salesman raised his hand. His name tag read Chris, and his voice wavered when he spoke. "Mr. James, I think most of us try to treat customers right, but sometimes it's hard not to assume things, you know?" Clarence nodded, his expression softening. "That's honest, Chris, and you're right. Bias doesn't always wear a name tag, but letting it speak for us?" He shook his head. "That's where the harm begins." He turned to the whole room. "We're not here just to sell cars. We're here to build trust, and trust doesn't come with price tags or dress codes." Marla shifted in her seat. She hadn't spoken yet, not a word since the reveal. But now Clarence's gaze found her. Not sharp, not punishing, just steady. "Marla," he said gently, "is there anything you'd like to say?" A breath, a pause. Her voice, when it came, was quieter than anyone expected. "I made a mistake," she said. "I misjudged you, and I'm sorry." The words hung there. Not dramatic, not rehearsed, just raw. Clarence nodded slowly. "Thank you for saying that. I believe in second chances, but I also believe in accountability." Then he turned back to the group. From today forward, we are rewriting the culture here. We're starting training, real training, on bias, on respect, on human decency. Everyone who walks in this door deserves dignity." He let the moment breathe. No one interrupted, no one looked away. What would change in your world if everyone was treated as if they truly mattered? Clarence leaned forward slightly, his voice low but firm. "If anyone has a problem with that, now's the time to speak." No one did. Sometimes, the hardest part of change is standing still and letting the truth wash over you. The meeting ended not with applause, but with something far more meaningful: understanding. As the staff filed out of the glass-walled conference room, their steps were slower, more thoughtful. Clarence remained behind for a moment, watching them go, hands resting on the edge of the table. He wasn't smiling, not yet. There was still work to do, but the soil had been turned, and that was enough. For now. Vincent approached. "That was something, Clarence," he said quietly. "You didn't just draw a line, you raised the floor." Clarence gave a faint nod. Let's just hope they heard more than just words. Later that week, a soft shift began to ripple through Hamilton and Royce Motors. Subtle, but unmistakable. Marla stood at the front of the showroom as a new customer walked in. A young woman with dreadlocks, a worn canvas bag, and paint on her fingertips. She wore a tie-dye t-shirt and sneakers that had seen better days. A few weeks ago, Marla might have glanced away, might have made assumptions, but not today. Instead, she smiled, genuinely, and stepped forward. "Welcome. Is there a particular model you're interested in, or would you like me to walk you through what we have?" The young woman blinked, surprised by the warmth. "Just browsing," she said. "Honestly didn't think anyone would give me the time of day in a place like this." Marla's smile didn't fade. "Well," she said, "we're not that kind of place anymore." From across the showroom, Clarence watched the interaction quietly. He didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. The change wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But it was real. Have you ever witnessed a person begin to grow right in front of your eyes? Clarence turned away, the late afternoon light catching his reflection in a luxury SUV's window. What stared back wasn't just an owner or a businessman, but a man who knew change doesn't begin with power. It begins with one choice, one person, and the courage to see people for who they really are. Life has a quiet way of reminding us that dignity doesn't wear a uniform. It doesn't come wrapped in a suit or sparkle with a brand name. Sometimes it walks in wearing worn-out sneakers and a calm smile, asking nothing more than to be treated with respect. Clarence James didn't raise his voice. He didn't shame or humiliate. He simply revealed the truth, one that's easy to forget in a world that moves fast and judges even faster. For many of us who've lived long enough, we know how it feels to be overlooked. Maybe it was in a waiting room, at a bank, or even within our own families. And yet we also know the power of stillness, of letting our actions speak, of showing grace when others offer judgment. This story reminds us that kindness and fairness aren't gestures of charity. They are the foundations of a good life. The next time someone crosses our path, looking a little rough around the edges or out of place, perhaps we can pause and choose to see the person before the appearance. Because in the end, treating others with respect isn't just about who they are, it's about who we are. In the days that followed, Clarence didn't boast, didn't seek applause. Instead, he walked the showroom floor each morning, greeting his staff with quiet warmth and steady eyes. One afternoon, he passed Marla speaking gently with a single mother and her young son, offering time, not just prices. There was no speech, no dramatic gesture, just the quiet power of change taking root. Hamilton and Royce Motors became something more than a place to buy cars. It became a place where assumptions were questioned and dignity restored. Training sessions began, listening circles were formed, and the silence that once echoed with judgment began to fill with understanding. Because racism doesn't always roar, Sometimes it whispers, and the most powerful response isn't rage, it's rebuilding. If this story stayed with you, share it. Subscribe to Echoes of Racism so these voices don't fade into silence. In the meantime, I've chosen 2 stories I think will move you just as much. Take care, and we'll see you soon.